my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. Today's episode is in partnership with Needed. The prenatal vitamin industry is failing us, leaving 95% of us depleted during one of the most nutritionally demanding times in our life. There's overwhelming evidence that higher standards of nutrition will improve fertility, birth outcomes, and the trajectory of life. Despite this, most prenatal vitamins only provide bare minimum nutrition. Needed goes way beyond bare minimums with products that can fully meet the needs of our minds, bodies, and babies. Needed's radically better nutritional system is third-party tested and rigorously developed with the endorsement of over 10,000 women's health experts. In addition to their prenatal multivitamins and pre- and probiotics, I am obsessed with their cognitive support supplement, which helps with brain fog, which I know is such a struggle when you're postpartum. A new exciting product from Needed is their Prenatal Choline Plus. Choline is super important for baby's brain development during pregnancy and breastfeeding. It also helps with your mood and metabolism, and it's a bulky ingredient, so it's hard to get enough that you need into your prenatal vitamins. So this separate one is going to get you to the 91% of your daily value versus most prenatals that only have about 1/10. So go over to Needed and check out how you can bundle that with your prenatal vitamins, and it's a really exciting new product that they're offering. At this point, I've talked to so many Birth Hour listeners who have discovered Needed through the podcast, and I love hearing the feedback that they're feeling better during pregnancy since starting with Needed's prenatal vitamins. Needed has all your needs covered from preconception to postpartum and beyond. Needed also simplifies things by bundling core products into easy and flexible monthly plans. You can use the code BIRTHHOUR for 20% off your first order and up to 40% off monthly plans at thisisneeded.com. Since this discount applies to your first order only, I always recommend going with one of the plans for the best value. At the end of this episode, I talked to Ryan, co-founder of Needed, about their recent IRB study results and what makes their products really stand out. So stay tuned for that conversation at the end of this episode. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another great way to be part of the Birth Hour community is by supporting us over on Patreon. So by pledging your support each month at the $5 a month level, you can get access to all of our archived episodes, so over 800 additional episodes not in the main podcast feed, as well as our private Facebook group that has such a great backlog of information. Just using that search bar, you can get almost any question answered, and you're going to find really supportive people there that are going to become your friends. And in addition to that, we do monthly Zoom calls. Just go over to patreon.com/Birth Hour and become a Patreon member and come see what it's all about. It's just $5 a month. You can get an even bigger discount. If you want to do an annual membership, you'll see that option there. And there's also an option to get it as a gift. So if you have a friend or a mother-in-law or somebody asking you what they can get you to help you prepare for baby, maybe you want a Birth Hour Patreon membership so that you can listen to more and more birth stories and find great community. So again, head over to patreon.com/Birth Hour to get started with that. Today's birth story guest is Lily, and she is back to share her second birth story. She shared her first back in 2022 on episode 720, which you can find in those archives at patreon.com/Birth Hour. And her first pregnancy had a lot of complications and things that came up, and those affected her birth. So she's back to share what she describes as a really redemptive experience. All right, let's hear from Lily. Hi, Lily. Welcome back to the Birth Hour. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Bran. I'm so happy to be here and get to talk to everybody again. It was so fun last time.
Awesome. Well, you shared your first birth story on episode 720 back in 2022, and you're back to share your more recent birth. But will you just remind people a little bit about you and your family?
Sure. Also, crazy fact that first birth, you posted it on my second child's birthday, September 6th.
Oh, that's so fun. I feel like that happens more often than I intend for sure, but I get people emailing me that. I'm like, oh, well, happy coincidence.
There's something witchy going on. So go on the birth hour to find out when your next child will be born. But my name's Lily. I live in Washington, D.C. with my husband. I have now, she's almost 3, a 3-year-old named Waverly. And I have a 7-month-old named Ellison, but we call her Sunny. And I'm a fitness instructor, used to be a lawyer, but during COVID, I made a full-time switch to movement, which has been amazing for me. I teach Aloe Yoga in Georgetown and Soulfire Yoga in Bethesda and a new studio called Pink Moon Moms that's just about to open up just for moms. So I'm excited to connect, and I've made so many friends from the last episode, people who have now just kind of become extended family on Instagram. So excited to make new friends and to check in with the old friends.
Awesome. I love hearing that. All right. Well, take us to wherever you want to start with the second pregnancy, getting pregnant, whatever you want to share.
Sure. I'm taking you to Maui, Hawaii.
Okay.
2 days before Christmas, when I just had this feeling like I was pregnant. My husband and I weren't trying, but I just had this feeling like maybe I was pregnant. I took a test with him there and it was negative. And then the next morning I woke up early, couldn't sleep, and I took a test again, found out I was pregnant, was so excited, and was able to surprise him later that day in Maui. So I found out there, and pretty soon after finding out, I started getting symptoms of pregnancy, which is pretty consistent with my first pregnancy. At around 6 weeks, I was starting to feel nauseous, and by really 8 weeks, it was ramping up to a place where I just remembered how it felt the first time, feeling so bad down and slightly hopeless. And it was really cool because in those early days, I just started thinking about, okay, how do I want to tell this story on the birth hour? How do I want it to go down? And I decided that I'm not going to roll over. I'm not going to just let myself be sick. I'm going to do everything I can and take my wellness so seriously. So right from the get, I started going to a prenatal specializing chiropractor and acupuncture. I took B6 vitamins. I was making sure to take naps when my daughter was napping. Thank God she was only 1.5 at that time. And I just did everything I could to feel okay, which really actually worked. The chiropractor, I think, was the biggest thing. Right after I started getting a couple adjustments, my migraines that I was getting were gone. My nausea was completely reduced. I found a great acupuncturist who also really helped with the nausea. I still ended up throwing up every day mostly, but I wasn't crippled, which felt really amazing. And I felt like I was in control and in a lot more power and in a place of positivity because of that. I was still teaching my fitness classes, even except for at the hot yoga studio. I stopped doing that, but all my unheated yoga classes I was teaching, and I felt great inspiring people. It was just, it's hard and you're beat down, but I really felt like I took ownership of my health in that first trimester, which I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to roll over, and I wanted to be there as a stay-at-home mom. I really wanted to show up for my daughter, which is really hard because you feel like you're sacrificing their joy by taking care of yourself, but you really do have to take care of yourself. I had high blood pressure in the first pregnancy, so that was something that we were hyper aware of in the second. I also gained a lot of weight in my first pregnancy, which comes hand in hand with high blood pressure. But I wanted to be really present with what I'm eating and the health of what I'm eating. It doesn't matter to me what the scale says, but I wanted to just make sure that I was putting really nutritious food in my body. So that was a focus. And my doctors had me taking baby aspirin. And I was just really trying to stay as calm as possible, a little extra meditation, a little more sleep, and just swerving and avoiding things that created stress in my life, like leaving 5 minutes earlier to get to teach a yoga class so I didn't get stressed out in traffic, just little things, which I really think made a big difference. And then that kind of all culminated at 16 weeks when I got to go to this amazing meditative retreat with Kevin Courtney, who's just a transformative yoga instructor. And in that week that I was able to be away, I could rest. I felt like it was a really cool turning point in my pregnancy because I was able to tune in to my baby, especially when you have like a child already. There's this feeling of like, you have to do so many things and you can't really focus on your pregnancy. But I was just like imagining the soul like coming into my body, and I felt really attuned to her. And it also helped me feel really attuned to my pregnancy and feel really trusting toward my body, which in comparison to my first pregnancy is just huge. Slight trigger warning, but I shared this in the first episode I was on with you all. My very best friend's sister passed away 3 days after having her third baby. So my first pregnancy was just so clouded in fear and anxiety and this feeling of like knowing how truly fragile life can be when you're creating it. And this time I wanted to come into pregnancy knowing that I made it from the first time and that I wanted to just be as strong as possible and attuned to my body as possible. So that retreat really helped me feel powerful and like I didn't have to be afraid. Like I felt this deep knowing and trust with my body and with the baby, felt like protected, which was a really cool feeling. When I got back from the retreat, I soon thereafter had my 20-week ultrasound, which we all know it's the anatomy scan. It's pretty intense. Like you're nervous that maybe something's not okay with the baby. I had full faith that everything was, but that appointment really was a turning point for me in my pregnancy. I was a little bit skeptical about a hospital birth the whole first half of my pregnancy, just because my first birth, the doctor who delivered Waverly just wasn't listening to me, and he made some comments that just really brought me down. And I just was like, I don't know. I didn't realize until later on that I was having like a stress response toward even thinking about a hospital birth. So when I was at this 20-week ultrasound appointment, already skeptical, at a different OBGYN practice altogether, but still skeptical, the doctor came in, and this is one of those practices where every appointment you're supposed to see a different doctor. He came in and he just said, well, your skin looks good. Do you have any questions? And that was it. And I'm like, wait a second. I didn't go to medical school. I don't know what you need to know. I don't know relevant information that would help you help me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I just felt like a little bit frustrated. This is like a very big appointment. And, you know, I would think that he had questions to ask me, but especially this time going to a practice where you see someone new every time, I just had this feeling like I was just a number and I was just a file, not a patient or a person. I had that experience while I was reading Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. And that book was just so transformative for me and eye-opening. It just like showed me that there are a lot of different ways to have a safe and healthy birth, and that it can always be grounded in trust and love for mom and baby and intuition. So it kind of all turned into this swirl of feeling like, wait a second, why am I just doing something that's giving me a stress response? I don't feel very well taken care of. I don't feel connected to my care. And that started me on this like exploratory journey across the DMV, looking at different childbirth centers and looking at, you know, the option of having a private doctor who I knew would be the person delivering my baby, looking at different hospitals to deliver that had midwifery parts to the hospital, like the George Washington Hospital. And in that journey, I was talking to my incredible doula. Her name is Caitlin Wozniak. And she said, you know, all of these birth centers are really far from you. And they were like an hour away, which was kind of nerve-wracking to me because I know from listening to the show how quick births can go for the second. And she said, you know, you live 12 minutes from a hospital. Have you explored just having a home birth and doing it at your house? And at first I thought that just sounded like so not me. It sounded so taboo. It sounded so like woo woo. I don't know. I just like had all these blocks up about it. And the more I listened to Ina May's book and the more I did my own research, I found myself finding it like really attractive. And I found myself feeling like really good about it, just like intuition, feeling really strong about it. And so I ultimately hired midwives and decided to pivot, which was a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I did have a high blood pressure pregnancy the first time. I had a breech baby the first time. Like there are so many issues, and you can't like have a baby at home if you're high risk for any reason. So I was a little bit nervous, like breaking up with my OBGYN practice saying, okay, I think I'm going to do this. But I listened to my intuition and I trusted my body, and I really liked the practice that I hired. They're called Chesapeake Midwifery. I cannot say enough good things. And the moment that I made that switch and fully committed, I just felt this massive, just like flush of relief and joy and calm. And so that really helped me feel like, okay, I made the right decision.
That's good.
It was amazing. And so then like the second half of my pregnancy, I just felt like it was really smooth. I had a lot of energy. I still took naps when it felt right. My husband and I were in such a better dynamic, and we kind of knew what to expect and what to brace for. We went on a beautiful baby moon. That was so nice. And then in my last trimester, I ended up spending the first two, like basically everything up to like the last month of pregnancy in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where my parents live. So they could help me out a little bit more with my daughter, and they watched her every morning. So I worked out every single morning and did like heavy weights. So I just felt strong, and I felt attuned, and I felt just so redeemed already. Preparing for the home birth was really exciting. I ended up getting a birth pool that I put in my closet. It was good. I think a challenge was helping my dad, especially, and just family in general, accept that this is my choice. I totally am fine with doing whatever I want to do, but my dad's a doctor. I have a lot of like medical loving people in my family. So just navigating their feelings toward birth and hospitals versus home birth was an interesting journey, but I'm really just glad that my husband was super supportive. And actually, funny enough, he felt good about it because someone on Spitting Chicklets, which is a hockey podcast, was sharing about his wife's home birth. So he heard about it and then he felt good about it. So shout out to men sharing about their wives' birth on podcasts too.
Nice.
Yeah. So I ended up coming home from Cape Cod, hoping that I'd have the baby early because I had Waverly early, but I went a week past my hospital or OBGYN due date and about 3 days past my midwife due date. So depending on, I didn't even know what my due date was because there are so many different ones, but it was definitely past 40 weeks. And, I got 2 induction massages at Ohana in Bethesda, Maryland. And I finally, at like a week past, my water broke after I got in a fight with my dad about home birth versus hospital birth. So it was probably not safe, but I got in a fight with my dad, and like an hour later, my water broke, which I was like, we should have just gotten in a fight sooner, Dad. This could have been over sooner. But that happened at like 1:30 in the morning. My water broke in the middle of the night and I felt the gush. So I was really excited. I remember ordering Call Your Mother bagels online so they'd be at the house the next morning for the midwives and my doula and everyone, just to have some bagels at my house. And just getting really excited to meet Sunny, just like really excited, and felt so right and like at home and hunkered down in my beautiful like bedroom / birth room. But then the next day came and like I was just in early labor for like that whole night. I was having like about 4 contractions an hour. They were strong but not crazy. And then the next day the same thing. So my husband called out of work. We went on this beautiful walk. We're so lucky. We live right next to Rock Creek Park. So we went on a woods walk in Rock Creek, just grounded down in nature, got very Ina May with it all, just felt the flow state of everything. And still I was having those contractions just for like nothing was changing. Nothing was progressing. So my midwife came that day at like 3 or 4 or something, and just to check in on me. She didn't want to do a check because my water had been broken, but she did some other stuff. And she said, we think the baby will probably be here soon. But she left me with something that the Chesapeake midwives call the vagina bag. And the vagina bag is a bag that looks like vagina, which is hilarious. But inside of it has like all the stuff that I would need if I were going to do an at-home induction. So there's like castor oil. And I honestly forget what else, because I was like, all I know is I don't want to have to use the vagina bag. So, and they're like more than half of the time, we give people the vagina bag and it just scares them or like gets them into labor. So we're just going to leave the vagina bag with you and hope it works its magic. So we have the vagina bag in my room. That night, I just really thought, you know what, I'm going into labor tonight. Like that's how it works. The moon's out, like I'm relaxed. It's going to start. But my contractions did start to get more intense, but I just knew I wasn't in like active labor. Like this was just a whole 24 hours of early, 24 plus of early. But it was getting a little bit more intense as the night went on. And by 4 o'clock in the morning, I remember just like waking up my husband being like, dude, I keep on getting woken up from contractions. Like I really haven't slept. I'm going to call the midwives. It is getting a little bit more intense. And at that point, I was just glued to my birth. So they decided that they'd come over. I remember calling them at like 4:30 in the morning, calling my doula soon thereafter, telling her like people are going to head over, like the party's about to start. So at that point, I had some breakfast and my husband, Ryan, filled up my birth pool way too hot, but he filled it up in the closet. Everything was just getting set up. I had my galaxy light. It was candlelit. It was gorgeous. I had this scent made for my labor, which sounds so wild, but I met someone who creates a scent, like tuning into your spirit and your soul. And she'll just create a scent. Like you don't tell her what you like. You just tell her like what the occasion is or what's going on. So I made a birth scent with her. So I had my birth scent out and just was grounding in, and everyone showed up at around 5:40. They set up. The midwives are just incredible. They make sure everything's all good. They did a check like right when they got there, and the check was me being about 5 or 6 centimeters dilated already and 50% of face. So that was pretty cool. But when they did the check during a contraction, they discovered that my water was only half broken. And I've listened to so many episodes, Bryn, and I had never heard of this one. I was like, I know my stuff. Have you heard of this before? Was it on an episode?
Like where there's like a small leak or something like that?
It was like basically my water had broken around, like from her shoulders up, but from her head down, the water was still in. The like sac was still intact.
How would they even know that?
So that's what I was thinking. So basically they knew that there was amniotic fluid because they tested my underwear.
Okay.
So they knew that there was some sort of like water breakage the day before. But when I had a contraction, she felt like the water intact around the baby's head. And it was so crazy because she said the day before the same exact thing happened to another woman she delivered. So I was like, well, I'd never heard this.
I've heard of it like resealing, and I've heard of it kind of like there's like a small leak and then maybe baby's head like blocks that. Makes me wonder if that test they did was just inaccurate, because I do hear that frequently. But you had a lot of leakage, right?
So much.
Yeah, so that doesn't make sense.
Like I was convinced, and you can kind of smell, I kind of smelled like pool water, like when the water breaking, like if anyone's like, I don't know what's in my underwear, to me, it felt like pool water. And I remember saving that so people could be like, because no one tells you what it smells like. To me, it kind of smelled like, like indoor pool or something. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's new. The way you're describing it is definitely new.
So yeah, she said it was half broken.
Okay.
And she broke the second half of it, which was around Sunny's head. And like, honestly, just like that, we went from early labor pains to like real contractions. And that was pretty exciting because I was just at that point, like so ready to meet my baby. It was really cool in comparison to at the hospital. At the hospital, although I was induced and I had a vaginal delivery, I did not get an epidural, which was very intense. This time, I was at home. I was in a comfortable place, wasn't induced, wasn't having Pitocin contractions. And I had a lot of different tools to help me navigate the intensity of contractions. Thanks to this podcast, I ordered a TENS unit like a week before I ended up having Sunny, and it was incredible. So we used a TENS unit at the beginning, which just really helped me navigate the contractions and help just take away the edge of it. I remember her hearing, I don't know if it was on this podcast or somewhere else, instead of just like deciding, okay, this is painful, to just like try to mentally describe the contraction in my head instead of pain, like, oh, this feels dull, this feels sharp, this feels achy, like trying to just give it a different word, kind of like if you were tasting a food that you decided you didn't like, trying to like taste the flavor of the food as opposed to just being like, I don't like broccoli or whatever your thing is. So I was trying to do that, and that mentally really helped me. I grounded in on my breath, which always helped. And I'm like a huge proponent of making noise to move energy and move just the vibrations of noise. So I just sounded like a whale upstairs while my daughter was with my parents downstairs. Like, who knows what they were doing, singing to Taylor Swift. I'm upstairs making whale sounds, but it felt really good. And I felt really supported. Eventually, I think it was like, I just remember myself like leaning over my dresser with contractions and making sure that my hips were moving, had the TENS unit, but eventually I began to transition to a little bit more intense contractions. So we decided to go into the birth pool, which was super, like I said earlier, hot. My husband just made it hot, which I honestly liked at first. So I was in there. For my yogis, I was in like a froggy pose, like a Saturday night stretch. For my athlete people, I was just like in a frog pose, basically. My like legs were out wide. It just like helped me feel like I was open, and I just focused on opening and relaxing and my breath, and just like tried to really hone in on serenity. I remember my first labor, I hated the sounds. I didn't want any music playing. It was just, and I think it was because there was so much ruckus of people moving in and out. There's like the beeping of like the monitors, and there's like wires. I just remember feeling really overstimulated when I was in my hospital experience. And then when I was able to be home in my closet in this birth pool, my husband just intuitively turned on like spa sounding music. And it was just so nice. And I also was in labor in the morning. So it was like this beautiful September morning in DC. I was set up right by a window. I had this like shrine in my closet that had all my crystals that I felt close with. I had like this water that I did a mother's blessing, and I had all my friends like bless these little stones and bless this water. So I had like a beautiful carafe of water and my crystals and my stones. And I just felt so held by the people on earth who love me and my angels, and just felt really good. I remember I had some lavender mint towels like chilled in a mini refrigerator by my birth pool. I was really trying to create a spa experience for myself, and it helped so much. It really worked.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so great. And, we talk about it all the time, but as you go through different sections of labor, you get tired at around a certain time. So it was really cool to have the second labor and feel the same pattern emerging. So I remember, getting tired and sleepy and thinking to myself, all right, like right now you're sleepy. That means we're about to be in transition. So I ended up getting to transition in the birth pool. At this point, I think I started active labor at around 6 a.m. At around like 9 a.m. I was in like pretty intense contractions. So it's only 3 hours. at the end of like me being at the birth pool, it was when I had long contractions, but I also was getting like that urge to push at the peak of a contraction. I just felt like, okay, I want to push. But that like more athletic feeling was causing me to feel even more warm in my warm pool. So I ended up just feeling a little bit faint by the end of my birth pool experience. So I was really afraid to get out of it because it was so helpful in navigating the intensity of my contractions. But they were like, all right, let's just see how it feels because we don't want you to faint. So at around 9:30, 3.5 hours in, I got out of the birth pool and I went into my bathroom. They wanted to make sure that I went to pee. So I did that. And I started doing squats over the toilet and doing hip sways in the bathroom, which is what ended up helping me through transition the first pregnancy. So it was pretty cool to see like my intuition and like my body asking for things, and just having a birth team that really just trusted me to listen to my body and just encouraged me to do what feels right. So I ended up doing that, squats and sways. But after about 30 minutes in the bathroom, I felt like that panicking feeling during that bathroom experience. I felt like that panicky edge. And I had that in the bath or pool to an extent, but I was really feeling it there. And I felt like I needed to like be in my bed. So we ended up going over to my bed. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I think I just got through transition. Like I'm feeling that urge to push. And mentally, as I was in transition, I thought to myself, if this is as bad, like if this is as intense as it's going to get, it's so much better than the first time, which was such an empowering thought. And like, I just like felt so powerful, like thinking about the Lily who did this birth experience 2 years before and getting to like acquaint with her now, having grown so much and having so much trust in my body. I remember the first pregnancy when I was in transition being so scared and like worried, like if I would make it. And in this one, I just felt like knowing that I'd make it, knowing that my baby was okay. I just felt like attuned with my body and like the glory of what it means to be a woman and why we are associated with warriors. So it was a really powerful moment, even in like those really intense contractions. So anyway, we got to the bed and I started pushing. We ended up putting like the pregnancy big ball that we bounce on. We ended up putting that on my bed and I was leaning over it. My husband was in front of me and I was using his hand to like, I was like doing a bicep curl, basically holding on to his hand. So I was creating tension up top so I could like create like more relaxation down low.
Like kind of hanging off of him.
Yeah, exactly. And just like having like, just letting the tightness be in my arms so I could have more opening down there. I ended up having a cervical lip a little bit. And so my midwives just like absolutely nailed it. They got her past that cervical lip in like, I think it was 2 pushes. So that was just like the moment that they did that. And like, thank God they figured that out early because I only ended up pushing for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't know. It was really quick. And I also was pushing in the way that I'd been trained with my doula. She's the don't push like you're pooping doula. That was her original tagline years ago. So she and I were just talking through like squeezing through my core, hugging the baby out, and just different imagery to like try to protect my pelvic floor. It was so crazy because like I was giving birth to Sunny when I usually every morning would go to the bathroom. So this time I did go number 2, and I feel like women do not share about that much in the birth story, but I wanted to just put it out there because I remember feeling terrified that would happen to me, and it did. And it's not so bad. Like I promise you, it doesn't have to be as big of a focal point fear. If anyone out there has that fear too, like what if I go potty? Well, I'm like, it was fine. It was totally fine. And I was really grateful for my birth scent because I just remember being like a little bit embarrassed because of the smell. And my husband just like whipped out my birth scent, and it just like brought me right back to like, we're all here. No one, like, we're all in the same process. It's part of being human. It's whatever. So that happened.
I feel like most people don't even notice the smell too. Like you're just so in the zone.
Probably because like at a hospital, they probably have like at the hospital too. I feel like they have like fans and like all this stuff to like suck the air out. But I was just like in my bedroom.
Yeah. Or it's like on a chuck pad and they just whisk it away. And
yeah, my angel saint of a midwife was catching it in like tissues or paper towels or something, and then just like holding it like some sort of like gift from God and bring it to the bathroom. And I was like, these women are truly the closest thing to angels I will ever meet on this earth. They were
and they're probably like excited when that starts to happen because it means you're really close. So
exactly. I'm over there being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And they're like, no, this is great. Like you're getting close. Your body's ready. Everything works. And they didn't care at all. So it's just in your head.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's embarrassing and it's real and it's really not as bad as I thought it would be. So anyway, she started coming out and I just remember looking at my husband and we just kept saying in between pushes, like how much we can't wait to meet her and how we can't wait to hold her and how we love her already. And I just felt so close to him and it was just like special. And I just remember, I'm tearing up a little bit. I just remember having like all the people around me who I got to choose. I remember feeling not violated by a lot of people seeing me naked this time. I felt so safe. I felt so loved and held by the people in the room and people outside of the room. And so excited to meet my daughter that, and proud of myself for, going against the grain and doing something that a lot of people maybe want to do, but didn't feel like they could. I just felt proud of myself for listening to my intuition. And, it was just a really cool moment. And then she came out and I didn't catch her, although I wanted to in my mind, but it just didn't logistically work out. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of a push and, I don't know. There was like a little second of like, okay, we need to get her out. And so she came out and I just remember holding her and she didn't cry right away. And, just knowing that she was okay and just knowing that everything was fine and knowing that all like the best thing I could do for her in those seconds was just like tell her how much I love her and hold her close. And my midwives, they were right there and that everything was okay. And, she cried and, in your mind, it's like 10 minutes and they're not crying, but it was like it had to have only been 30 seconds. And Sunny started crying and I just felt so, I shared a picture. So it'll be on the website, but there's just like this flush of pride and redemption. Like nobody did anything. I didn't feel like I was forced to do anything I didn't want to do. I just felt like that's how birth's supposed to go, or like that's how my story was supposed to be with Sunny. It was amazing. I gave birth to my placenta. My midwives helped me through, and I just got to cuddle up in my bed with my husband right there next to me, and we just got to dote on Sunny. And oh my God, it was just so amazing. It was so cool. And I just was like, even in those moments, Brent, I was thinking of you and I was thinking of your listeners and like how I can't wait to tell them that it worked this time. And like, that if you had a bad first pregnancy and bad first labor, that it can be really amazing and redemptive the second time.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was 10:30 in the morning. So I had this baby at 10:30 in the morning. It took me 5 hours in total to be in labor with her once active labor started. And then it was just a day. The midwives, they cleaned up everything. I got to have my Call Your Mother bagel, which, Bryn, if you're ever in DC, you have to get one. They're so yummy.
Good to know.
Yeah, and it was great. I had minimal tearing, didn't need stitches. And yeah, I could start the road to recovery. It felt like right away because I was at home. Yeah. It was awesome.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you and love that you were
Thanks, girl.
already thinking about sharing it. And here we are. So
This feels like the closing chapter, like getting to talk to you and tell your people the story feels like the last part of my what it means to give birth to me.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think I want to go back and listen to your first episode because I feel like just your like tone of voice and everything is going to be so different from this story. So
different.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know you have some stuff to share from postpartum, so let's go ahead and get to that.
Yeah. So immediate postpartum, like the first 24 hours of Sunny being born, and I think a lot of people have this, like the endorphins were up and like I was so tired and your body's so beat down, but somehow you're still glowing. My best friend who lived in DC with me, who just recently had moved, was randomly in town the next day for work. So she came and got to meet my baby, and like, I was just like so happy. Mm-hmm. And being at home, I felt like my body was recovering really quickly. I also really like open expectations with my husband on like, look, I want to do the 5-5-5, like 5 days in bed, 5 days like in your room. And then I forget the other 5 days just in your house. Like I really wanted to give my body the time on the front end to recover so it wouldn't take as long as it did last time. So Sunny was born in September. So like that first really nurturing month was lovely. And then it was October and my daughter, like she just started going to preschool 3 days a week and it was sick season. I'm not kidding you, Bryn. Every month without fail, Sunny was getting sick from whatever was coming home from CCPC. And it was really hard. Sunny was a great sleeper, just like Wavy. But when she got sick, she did not sleep well. So I just was like, it was weird because I felt like, okay, everything's good. And then the second that my sleep was just completely decimated, these feelings of anxiety came through and depressive feelings, which I remember having with Waverly, but maybe I just was a brand new mom and didn't realize what I was going through. But in this second iteration of the experience, I recognized quite early on that like, these are abnormal thoughts. These are abnormal feelings. Like I'm definitely going through some postpartum depression or anxiety or something. But it got really bad around Christmas. Sunny sick again. And then it was Christmas. We were traveling. We traveled for Thanksgiving to be with family to Massachusetts. And then we traveled again for Christmas to Massachusetts. So we were just back and forth. Sunny was sleeping all these different places. She kept getting sick. We were around people getting sick again. And I just felt so beat down. I felt like I had the pressure of making the holidays special and the pressure of like getting my baby to feel good. And like breastfeeding was just like, it's never really my favorite thing. So all those things plus breastfeeding just felt like so much. And I wanted to share that because you can have a really great pregnancy and you can be totally attuned with your body and all those things. And like mental health postpartum can still be like a big challenge. Yeah. Especially with sickness, like just constant sickness. It's so hard. Yeah. And the holidays, I just wish if I could go back, I wouldn't have traveled for Thanksgiving or Christmas. I just would have stayed home. And I don't say that to give people advice on their lives that I don't know the details of anyone else's, but I wish I had just been as adamant as I was about my boundaries and recovery in the first month. I wish I had just known what I know now and been more adamant about like, okay, you know what? We're going to stay home. And you know what? We're going to minimize a little bit how much exposure Sunny's having to all of these germs, especially because she just kept getting sick. Yeah. I always say like a new baby is the best excuse to not do all the holiday things. Like It's hard enough having a holiday baby because I think another thing that really impacts postpartum is your ability to get outside. So if you live in a cold climate and you're just in it for the winter, you know, and then everyone's getting sick. Yeah, it really affects you. So I think for sure, like no need to travel. If people want to come to you for a quick visit or whatever, up to them. But yeah, it's definitely a good excuse to not
do all the things over the holidays.
Totally. And I just felt like, I just think that, I live in DC, like I live in a city where women are just like going and going. And I'm like, I can do it. Like, it's fine. But it like truly wasn't fine.
Yeah.
I remember driving to Massachusetts with my 2 dogs, my 2 kids, 10-hour drive, and just like crying. Like I was not okay.
Yeah.
And I went back to teaching fitness classes earlier this time. I guess I just felt like I could do it. And I just wish that I had given myself a little bit more space. So I eventually, my breast milk also was an issue because my kids sleep through the night. So I'm not like feeding them throughout the night. So I always have issues with supply, and I honestly don't want to wake them up in the middle of the night. If they're going to sleep, I want them to sleep. So supply was really a challenge. And I just like remember, and I had this the last time, around like 5 months, the baby's just a lot bigger and my body just like cannot keep up with like how much milk that they need. And it didn't matter what I did. And that made me feel mad at my body, which how dare you, when you just went on this gorgeous journey of trust with your body, like how dare you be mad at it all of a sudden. So that was really tough. And my husband and I had a great dynamic this time versus the first pregnancy or postpartum. Like he knew how to be there for me a lot better. But even still, it's going to put stress on your relationship. It's going to put stress on everything if you're not okay and you're depressed.
Yeah.
So I ultimately stopped breastfeeding at 6 months, which helped a lot because poor Sunny was at like the 14th percentile for weight because of all the sickness. And then my milk wasn't enough milk. So the doctor and I just like decided, let's put her on some formula. And she immediately started gaining weight. She was less fussy and less sickly. So that was a really good choice. And I know it's pretty controversial. And I've been getting judgment a lot from people about stopping breastfeeding before 1 year. But I just honestly, if we take one lesson away from this episode, it's we listen to our bodies, we honor our intuition.
Yeah.
And my body was ready to stop. And I got a therapist. So now I'm like 7.5 months postpartum and I'm finally on the ups.
Good.
I just wanted to like hold space for people who are showing up for their lives and holding space for other people while they're still not okay themselves. And
yeah,
I just want to cheer those people on. I also went back to going to the chiropractor, and the adjustments are releasing something for me emotionally too. Like my body needed massage, it needed adjustments. And so through like body work and like massages and chiropractor and yoga, and I got a therapist, all that, now I feel so much better. And I really just feel like my hormones have leveled out too. So now I feel really great. And now I've learned a great new lesson for the next baby, which is bigger boundaries, especially when it comes to traveling. And I don't know, just giving myself a lot more grace next time in the postpartum.
Yeah.
Not expecting myself to be able to do everything. Ask for more help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that and the great, I think, perspective. Like you're still very newly postpartum in the grand scheme of things.
True.
But I'm glad you're doing better now. I know you had some resources you wanted to share.
Yeah. Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. If anyone is walking around and coming into pregnancy with like that, with fear or mistrust of body, or you just want to feel like grounded and surrounded by story and I don't know, educated, I highly recommend reading that book. I will always, forever and ever and ever, preach the good word of the Birth Hours Know Your Options course.
Oh, good. That's always good to hear.
I completely love it. And I love that it's evergreen. So there's no gotcha. There's no, well, now you have to buy something new. I bought it 2 years ago or 3 years ago almost. And I was able to go back to those videos in this pregnancy to refresh on things that I thought I didn't remember very well. It completely changed the outcome of my birth story with my first child. And it was just like the foundation of my knowledge of birth for the second round.
Aww.
So I highly recommend that. Chesapeake Midwifery, even if you love your OBGYN and you just want to have some birth education. I cannot say enough good things about my midwives. Caitlin Wozniak, an incredible doula in the DMV, but she also does virtual doula work. So if you live anywhere in the world and you just want like an incredible badass by your side during childbirth in a virtual way, like she's a girl, and all of these are linked. Honestly, social media, the Birth Hour podcast episodes, just like following people who you admire and listening to their birth stories. Both of my birth stories are on my social media, on my Instagram, like story highlights. So if you want to like listen to the actual story of the baby being born with photos, you can go to my story and see photos and videos and all that.
Very cool.
I think that's it for resources, but I know I have a full list that I have for the website.
Yeah, we'll put them all in the show notes for sure. And then the best place to reach out to you, is that Instagram?
The best place to reach out to me is Instagram. And like I'm telling you, send me a DM. I love getting to know this community. It's been so cool to have a second baby and have people reaching out to me who are pregnant with their second, who had their first baby around when I had mine. It's just so cool to be in this sisterhood of people who want to be educated on childbirth and who just possess so much power and wisdom. So yeah, reach out to me there. My Instagram is Lily Scott, LILLY SCOTT. You can find me on TikTok if you're a TikTok person. My TikTok is the Lily Scott, and you can come to a workout with me. I teach all over DC and Maryland, so it'd be so fun to do a workout with you too and just hang out and get to know one another in person. Or you can download my fitness app. It's called Electric Collective, or you can do it on your desktop, but I have 500 plus workouts. So you could do one new workout every single day and not even finish them in 1 year. So that's a cool way just to hear if my stuff inspired you to get info every day.
Very cool.
But I love making friends with all y'all. So thank you for your DMs. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming back, Lily.
Thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to be back for baby number 3.
Now I'm going to talk to Ryan, co-founder of Needed, about their recent IRB study results and all of the great products from Needed. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast to chat with me about Needed again.
Brand, I'm so excited to be back.
Awesome. Well, before we get into all of the new things happening over at Needed, can you just share with my listeners a little bit about who you are and your role at Needed?
Absolutely. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Needed.
All right. So I recommend Needed to my listeners, my followers on Instagram all the time. I've been using the products for over a year now. And I just really love that with your perinatal products, you really go beyond the bare minimum. And it's just really important, especially for the people in my audience, because we know that during the stages of life where you're growing babies and feeding babies are especially nutritionally demanding. So I love that you guys are addressing these nutrient deficiencies and talking about now that not all prenatal vitamins are created equally. And on that note, your team just released the results of an IRB study highlighting these differences between standard prenatal vitamins versus Neededs. Can you just talk a little bit more about this?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited. This has been a baby of mine for a while.
Yeah.
But basically, there is overwhelming evidence that proper nutrient levels can improve fertility, birth outcomes, and the trajectory of life for both mother and baby thereafter. Mm-hmm. Yet, as we all know, despite our little kind of communities, nutrition has not been front and center in the perinatal standard of care. And most prenatals on the market provide bare minimum nutrition support. We're designing and conducting studies to add to the clinical literature to unequivocally prove that women deserve more support, resources, and radically better nutritional care. We really just fundamentally think the evidence just cannot be ignored anymore, as the lack of nutritional support is really failing women and children. So our goal for this study specifically was to take a more comprehensive look at nutritional status in pregnancy. The study compared nutritional characteristics between women taking the needed prenatal multi and a standard prenatal vitamin.
Okay.
We collected survey data and analyzed nutrient biomarkers, so nutrient levels actually in the blood themselves, in a diverse group of 235 adult pregnant women across 7 U.S. states. And what's really exciting and what you're hinting towards is that the results actually revealed quite striking insights into how maternal nutrition status differs by the type of prenatal vitamin a woman is taking during pregnancy. Specifically, we found that women taking the needed prenatal multi had higher blood levels of key nutrients for pregnancy, including vitamin D, B6, selenium, and zinc, among a number of others. When we compared prenatal subgroups, we found that only the group of women taking the needed multi had sufficient blood levels of vitamin D and vitamin B6 compared to the group taking the standard prenatal. And nutrients like vitamin D and B6 play key roles in pregnancy in supporting both maternal and baby health outcomes. So it's really exciting, and it's also important to reiterate that our study was diverse and the prenatal groups were comparable on several key factors outside of their prenatal vitamins. This is really important for the rigor of the study. So for example, 1/3 of the women in each group identified as a race ethnicity other than white, and women in both groups were in similar stages of their pregnancy.
Okay, and what does the IRB part mean?
The IRB is the Institutional Review Board, and they're basically a committee that reviews clinical research involving human subjects to ensure that certain ethical standards are met.
Okay, it's super important when studying pregnant women.
Super important when studying pregnant women, and in terms of showing proper kind of rigor and study design went into the methodology of how we conducted the research as well.
Right. So one thing that I thought was interesting is that a lot of this past studies weren't even done on pregnant women or even women. Oftentimes it was like based on white men as far as vitamin levels and things like that. So as you mentioned, these are really striking results. And what does this really mean for women in the trying to conceive or pregnancy or postpartum season of life? Like, what should we be taking away from this data?
You're right that there is a lot of missing gaps in the research, though we also have found that there is a lot of really good research emphasizing the need for better nutrition at this stage of life. But overall, we see this study as adding to the growing body of evidence showing that, one, meeting nutritional needs through diet alone is very challenging in modern context. So supplementation is needed. Two, that most pregnant women in the U.S. fail to meet dietary recommendations for certain key nutrients that are very important for pregnancy, like vitamin D. And third, I think increased evidence that standard prenatals are really falling short in closing the gap between nutritional needs and dietary intake. And overall, we hope this study leads to more clinicians and moms advocating for the nutrition that is needed for a healthy pregnancy.
Yeah, and I've been sharing about this with my followers on Instagram from some of the data you guys are talking about. And one thing I thought was really interesting was the statistic about how few care providers are discussing nutrition with pregnant and postpartum women at all.
Yeah, that is absolutely striking. We found that nearly 80% of women reported receiving little to no nutritional advice from their OBGYN during their pregnancy care.
Yeah, and this is something that comes up on the podcast a lot because I feel like people really notice a difference when they have midwifery care versus OBGYNs because nutrition is something that's talked about in these much longer prenatal appointments and things like that. So yeah, it's a big part of feeling good throughout pregnancy. And I know that one thing that Needed really focuses on as well is that it's not just during pregnancy, but also postpartum. So can you talk a little bit about that as well?
We equate it in a lot of ways to nutritional depletion, and that a lot of the importance for this life stage is avoiding depletion. So meaning when your body lacks the essential vitamins, minerals, or other nutrients that are really needed for optimal function. And depletion is not something that occurs only through pregnancy, but women are more vulnerable in critical life stages such as pregnancy and breastfeeding. So that postpartum stage that you mentioned right there. And a lot of the problem is that women go into pregnancy already depleted and then increase their depletion in growing baby, so end up in a pretty tough spot postpartum. Mm-hmm. There are many contributors to this depletion, from nutrient deficient soil and stress. And then the signs of depletion like brittle nails, fatigue, headaches, mood changes, thinning hair, constipation, dry skin, all sound pretty familiar to us, right? Mm-hmm. And really research suggests that up to 95% of women experience nutritional depletion even when they are on a prenatal vitamin.
Oh my gosh.
Depletion is, I think, a much bigger problem than we actually, have historically given it credit. And a lot of us, women just assume we have to feel these things, these signs of depletion, just as part of our, that's just the status quo. That's how it's supposed to be. And I think a lot of our sort of emphasis is showing that no, radically better is possible. There are ways to better support ourselves through nutrition to minimize those signs of depletion.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to someone recording their birth story, and they were saying how, they were super focused on their nutrition during pregnancy, and then it kind of fell to the wayside postpartum. And it's like especially if you're breastfeeding, it's taking a lot of energy and nutrients, and then you're also sleep deprived because you have a new baby. So the depletion, I think, like you mentioned, is just something we really need to focus on beyond pregnancy.
Yeah, and most care providers aren't really reminding folks. They think of it as like a prenatal, not a perinatal.
Right.
There are some postnatals that exist, but I think the use of them in that breastfeeding life stage that is actually more nutritionally intensive than pregnancy is a non-supported part of this life stage. And, where we see so many women really talking about that postpartum period being the most difficult. And I think being able to advocate and raise awareness to better support and how do we care for mom, not just care for baby during that stage is very important.
Yes, I'm just nodding along to everything over here. So are there any other supplements that women should consider outside of a prenatal to help fight depletion?
Absolutely. So most prenatals and aren't included are vitamin and mineral blends. And there are many other nutrients that are supportive of combating nutrition. Unfortunately, we just don't think that there's a single product that can fully get you over the hill on depletion lack. So it needed what we are really focused on rather than just a single product, though we do hero our prenatal multi a lot, but really an emphasis on a system of products is most supportive. And for example, we do offer an omega-3 DHA EPA add-on. So DHA omega is often something that you probably do hear as part of taking that alongside your prenatal. And DHA and EPA are very supportive of a healthy pregnancy. Sometimes they are combined with a prenatal multi, but we often see that can lead to kind of lack of nutrient integrity or too low of doses. So we do think it is important to offer it as a separate product for that reason, but do advocate for that being added on to your system of products. And then there's a whole host of other products depending on needs. I personally really love our sleep support. Lack of sleep is a big contributor to depletion. And I also really love our breastfeeding safe cognitive support product. It's a product that really helps me sort of feel like me and try to do it all by being a working mom while still, breastfeeding and chasing after my kids. Being able to focus when I need to focus is a critical part of that.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of that one as well. So you guys offer several bundles and things like that with these add-ons. Where's the best place for people to start if they're trying to decide what's right for them?
Our website does help to guide you by sort of life stage or need, which is thisisneeded.com, or we're at Needed on Instagram. And we actually have a team of trained nutritionists and doulas as part of our customer support team. So they're eager and ready to help if you do want to sort of DM us or email us if you kind of get stuck on the website your own. So that's a great place to start. And then I'd also really recommend folks to go to thisisneeded.com/thrive to learn more about the prenatal study and the rigor that went into it, and a lot more results beyond what we're able to share today.
Yes, it's so fascinating. And I'm the same way. Like, I can't squeeze it all in to share on Instagram either. And so I'm like, please go check it out, because it really is amazing what you guys were able to find out from this study. And I love that people are available in the DMs to help guide, because I feel like it can be really overwhelming when choosing your prenatal. And starting with the main prenatal is obviously a great choice, but I know lots of people want to take advantage of these bundles too. So that's great to know that it's available to DM or email.
Yeah, I think we're here to help, and it's really a passion of a lot of members of the team to do so. So we're excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for chatting with me about all of this. It's always great to hear what you guys are up to, and I'm always happy to share with my listeners about Needed.
Thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you so much again to Lily for sharing her story. You can get more information from her episode on her show notes at thebirthhour.com by just searching for her name in the search bar. And be sure to check out all of the amazing products from Needed at thisisneeded.com and use the coupon code BIRTHHOUR to save up to 40% off. And then if you want to access our childbirth course or our Patreon group, those things will be linked in the podcast where you're listening to this episode, or you can find them on the website as well.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.